Just a little catching up from this week. 4 young Israelites in the Babylon court. 4 young men, Daniel, Belshazzar, Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego, were chosen by Ashpenaz, Nebuchadnezzar. It's too hard to say Nebuchadnezzar. Nebs. And I also spell N-E-B. Neb's highest official to be trained in the Babylonian way. And you talk about, you're going to do this and that. Well, Daniel says, we're going to just eat vegetables. And they said, well, what are you doing? You're going to wither away to nothing. He said, well, just give us 10 days and we'll show up. After 10 days, they were all good, even better than before. And Daniel stayed in the king's service until Cyrus came, the Persian king who overthrew Nebuchadnezzar. So he was in there a long time. Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. He brought all his magicians, sorcerers, interpreters, whoever else, and said, I want you to interpret my dream. But I want you to tell me what the dream is first. Huh? They said, well, tell us what your dream was. He said, no, you're supposed to, if you're that good, you're supposed to know. Well, then he made a decree that they're all supposed to get axed. And Daniel said, wait, don't do that. Just give a little time and we'll figure this out. So Daniel went back in his Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and said, pray for mercy from God. This interpretation, we can't do it ourselves. We need God to do this for us. So God does reveal the dream and its interpretation to Daniel. So Daniel goes back to Nebuchadnezzar, Neb, and says, this is what your dream was all about. It's going to be a great statue. I see you in dream a great statue. Head of gold, chest and arms of silver, the middle and thighs of bronze, its legs iron, and feet partly of iron and clay. But a stone cut out from not human hands comes, smashes into the feet, and the thing crumbles to the ground and turns to dust, and the winds blow it away, and there's nothing left. So Daniel interprets the dream. Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. However, another kingdom shall come and overthrow it. Not quite as good, silver, right? Then a third kingdom, the bronze, will come and conquer that. But it'll be a divided kingdom. The fourth kingdom that comes in will be divided. Like, not solid. The clay and the iron represent this divided kingdom. Not very solid. It's got some strength of iron, but it's not real strong because of the clay. So, the new kingdoms will intermarry and not hold together for very long. And here's an interesting quote. And in the days of those kings of God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall this kingdom be left to another people. It shall crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. What does that make you think of? We're in Advent season. This is pretty appropriate for that. So Daniel gets promoted, overseer of all Babylon, and he invites his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to be with him on this journey, to be the not enforcers, but appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon. So that brings us up to Ezekiel. Valley of the dry bones. Do you know? Think about this. Do you know? What? What is he talking about? Do you know? Throughout this Ezekiel reading, there is the Lord saying these things to the bones. Say to these bones, rise, and they'll rise and become life, because then you will know that I am the Lord. You'll know that I'm the Lord. So like I said, when I was driving up north on 43, I was passed by several vehicles. Some of them had a Green Bay Packers sticker on their car, so I knew where they were going. And I'm like, oh, I can see, because I was going the speed limit, 75, 80, and they were passing. No, I had it set at 65. The steering wheel like this. Anyway, I was getting passed left and right. They're good there. I know where they're going. At 7 o'clock, they got to make it up there so they can have a cold tailgate party up. And then I looked around and I saw all this brown. It's not white yet. We're in the middle of December. It's still not white. Maybe today. We'll see. But all this brown stuff, I think this is all dead stuff. This is all brown, dead, dry, decaying stuff. Will it come back? Well, we live in Wisconsin. Of course we know it's going to come back. My father-in-law always did a prairie burn. He owned 1.5 acres, and he'd always go out and burn the prairie so the natural stuff would come up. burned so a new life could come up. We celebrate the life of Nelson Mandela this week. Certainly a man who's had trials and tribulations in his life, a rebel to begin with, a lawyer, stood for civil rights and things like that in South Africa where there was no civil rights. Apartheid. I never knew what that meant. But the black people were oppressed greatly by the white people. And Nelson Mandela didn't like that, and he was imprisoned on Robben Island for years and years. He was in prison for 27 years, as a matter of fact. Went in a very angry man. Came out transformed. That happens. 27 years gives you a lot of time to think in a prison like that. You could say that Nelson was at his end, was at his very bottom. And then God lifted him up, transformed him. He came out of prison, became president of South Africa, and tried to unite the peoples, tried the way of forgiveness, and it worked. It was a man who had nothing left now to be a guiding light for the people. His people, not just the black people who saw that, everybody. If you've seen the movie Invictus, it's about that rugby team that is not very good. They're all whites, one black, and now that he's in power, they say, let's get rid of the rugby team and bring our own people in. And let's keep our old flag, and let's get those whites and oppress them, and let's do with them what they did to us. And Nelson says, no, keep the rugby team, keep this, have a new flag, because this is what we want to do. We're a new people. We're uniting. Abraham Lincoln tried and did unite a country that was split and becoming more split. Well, even today, there are still flags, Confederate flags. I had a friend that went to Gettysburg Seminary, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That's not the South. Right on the edge, though. He said, I went there, and I was like I was in the deep South, because they had the rebel flag, they had Confederate flag, they had all kinds of things about the South. He said, I didn't know where I was. I'm in Pennsylvania. Interesting. The dry bones, very symbolic of our lives at times too. The word around our text study and some other places have called for a term called compassion fatigue. Some of you know what that's like. In your hearts, you know what that's like. Compassion fatigue. You give and give. If you're in the health, especially in the healthcare profession, you keep giving and giving, and you find you have nothing left to give. I'm just all used. You might even say I'm all dried up. I'm all used up. I have nothing left to give. You have the person who's addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they sink, and they sink, and they sink, and they hit rock bottom where they have nothing seemingly left. Even in the Beatitudes. Woe to you. Woe to you, so-and-so, such and such. One pastor translated, go to hell. What do you say? The pastor said hell. In his sermon, he said hell. He said, no, what you need to do is you need to go to sometimes your personal hell in order to feel and experience the presence of God. To have your lives truly transformed into something new. That you are not alone, that you have the hand of God next to you, bearing you up, giving you new insights and new ways of doing things. I don't see a lot of sermon notes being written right now. Well, maybe not. They're memorizing it, I'm sure, for later. Now that I went off track, what was I saying? Something about bones. Yeah, bones, talking about bones. Oh, but it was a pivotal time in Judah's history where they were in exile and they were being beaten up and they had nothing left. And God was saying to them, look at these valleys. This is Israel. This is Israel right here. These bones right here. Now, do you think that with these bones that have nothing left, nothing, dry, flaky, brittle, crumbling, that I can bring new life to them? If I can bring new life to them, just think what I can do for you. And as this happens, you will know that I am the Lord. And Nebuchadnezzar saw some of these things that Daniel did, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, what they did. He saw that was the Lord working in the lives of those people. Ezekiel saw this happening. He knows this is the Lord doing these things. Word and action reminds you of creation. God breathed, right? Ruach. The Hebrew word breath, spirit, wind, could be translated all three. God breathed into this land and breathed new life into the people. Made the people out of clay, breathed life into them. God breathes life into these bones, and they rattle and they shake and they come back to life. God breathes into that person with compassion, fatigue, and gives them new strength and a new way and a new direction. Perhaps friends that will help them. Perhaps time off that they need. Perhaps something else that they need to fill up and become more whole. God breathes in. But unlike the creation story, it wasn't God's action alone. He had his buddy Ezekiel with him. Ezekiel, say these words and I will breathe life into them. I'll tell you what to say. Just like Jeremiah, just like Moses, and just like those others we learn about throughout Scripture. Those ones who could not speak very well, God gives them the words, the inspiration, and the life to make things new. God breathes in the Spirit. Sometimes you wonder, I would like God to breathe the Spirit into me more because I'm at a point where I'm having a rough time. Things are tough for the family, with the kids, with jobs, with whatever, my health. I need this spirit of wholeness and healing. I need God's breath of spirit to buoy me up. I'm at the dry bones level now. And God says, I am with you. Ezekiel, I love you. I've never left you go. I will restore you to fertile lands that you once knew. I will restore you to right relationship with me. A relationship that I instituted, that I created, that I keep going. All you need to do is be receptive. And sometimes at your dry bones level is the only time you pay attention and are receptive. When you get to that point, then I can really do some action in your life. Pay attention. So I ask you again, do you know? Do you know how God is present? Do you know, and how do you know that the Lord is with you? Think about that as we go throughout our days. Do we feel left alone? Do we feel abandoned? Do we feel out of God's care? That God's presence is way up there somewhere and I'm down here alone? Or are there ways that God lets you know that God is present in your life? Do you know